We're going to go ahead and transition now to our Q&A. Now, one of the things I would invite you to consider is a question that you might be asking that would be something that many people on the call in the community would also be interested in knowing. Now, again, tonight is just an opportunity for us to start this conversation. It is by no means an end. We would love to get to every single question. What we will do is consolidate some of these questions into consistent themes. And some of the questions that we won't be able to get to this evening, we'll collect and answer in a frequently asked questions document that will be released later after the broadcast. So with that, we're going to go ahead and transition to the first questions this evening. First question, I'm going to go ahead and kick this over to you, Chris. What security structure does the district have besides Right Security?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Chris. We have several. So one of the security structures that I talked about is the 43 security specialists that we employ district-wide. Those are primarily assigned to our secondary buildings, so our high school or our middle school. But we also support our elementaries. We have 3 field coordinators and a security manager that deploys those teams on a daily basis. And we follow, much like many agencies do, very much so a evidence-based or evidence-led model of deployment of those. So we're watching our school environments for things where we might need to be, and then we transition those resources around. So you may have at one school one day 2 or 3 security specialists, and you may go to one campus because we've had some incidences and they have 4 or 5, or you may see a Right security car out in front of the building. We move those teams around regularly. The other thing we have is a current contract with the Keizer Police Department, who provides us 2 police officers and a sergeant that supervises them. They have very specific roles within the district. They are contracted to sit on our safety and support response team, so dealing with threat assessment, suicide risk assessment, and sexual behaviors. And then the second police officer assists us with any criminal investigations that we may have going, and acts as a liaison to our law enforcement partners as well. So provides us a lot of intelligence as the community moves, because the community is constantly moving in and around us. And then the third security system is that safety and support response system, which consists of 2 psychologists and a social worker.
Great. Thanks, Chris. So we have a lot of great questions coming in, and we'd like to invite our agency partners to go ahead and turn on their cameras right now, as there's an opportunity for all of you to speak up, and the questions that seem to resonate most with you to give some answers as well. So another great question in here: when I hear of a threat or concern for my student safety, what measures can I take, and how can I know the situation will be addressed?
Can you ask me that question one more time? I want to make sure I answer it correctly.
Absolutely. When I hear of a threat or concern for my student safety, what measures can I take, and how can I know the situation will be addressed?
That's a good question. I'm going to ask one of our law enforcement if they have any safety tips for a parent who a student might be experiencing a threat.
I would say it depends on the situation, but you have the option of contacting the school officials and or your local police department.
So let's jump in and talk. Oh, go ahead, George. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. So to jump in there, I'm actually going to give Coral a quick shout just from Safe Oregon, because so much of this, people are concerned about how they report or who they report to, and how's that going to be tracked back to the person making the report. And I think one of the systems that was put into place that really helps with our school safety is the ability to report through Safe Oregon. And that really, to me, is one of the first lines of at least making people aware of what the circumstances and situations are. And then I would also agree, reporting to local law enforcement is a must. And Safe Oregon is a great safeguard, and I think it's a great way to get the ball rolling. But as you know, we work really closely and collaboratively with the schools. Even though systems have changed over the last couple of years, our relationship with the schools and the school district is just as strong as it's ever been.
Great.
I'm going to take a piece of that one too, Chris. So yeah. I fully agree. I think your first call is to your local law enforcement. The school district does want to know, because you're going to come, the student is going to come to us. There are many things that we do, and if you've been a part of this, I hope you've had this experience, is that we have an abundance of services for kids. We can create safety plans, but first we have to get the information so that we can help navigate the situation while they're in school. And this happens within the district. And that's what these teams are created for, so that we can sit down with the parent and the student and then really walk what their school day looks like. How are we going to keep them safe? We have a lot of systems in place to do that. And generally my department and safety and risk management is engaged in those types of conversations when they're serious.
Great.
Can I do a follow-up? Sorry, Coral, could you tell us how it works? What happens once you get a report at Safe Oregon, and then maybe somebody from the district, then what happens on our end? Just a little simple example of how that works.
Yeah, thank you. So all of the tips that we receive through Safe Oregon are taken, and each one is reviewed by an actual person. We have technicians who have backgrounds in health services, social services, customer service. And so we evaluate every tip that comes in. We take them very seriously as well. And then we make a determination on the tip level. So if it's a critical or immediate threat, again, you know, we don't want to be replacing 911 or your local law enforcement, but we do have resources available to act on tips immediately. Otherwise, generally, we will partner with the schools and administrators or local law enforcement, depending on what comes in, and take the appropriate action from there. But Safe Oregon is a great resource if you know, sometimes students have a fear of retaliation. And so it's a great way to confidentially or anonymously report. The last piece of that question, as far as follow-up, of course, from the Safe Oregon side, you wouldn't get that. So we would encourage you to, you know, talk with your local schools and everyone here. But it is another avenue to report concerns.
Great. Thank you so much. Lots of great questions coming in through the chat here. I wish we could spend some hours going through these, because I know they're important to you and we want to get you as much information tonight as possible. So another question from the chat is, what is being done to prevent school violence? Are metal detectors being installed?
I think we've talked a lot about the preventative systems, as well as we've done, you know, some informational campaigns. One of the things that parents can help us with is talking to your student. Talk to your student. They know what's going on. If your student has a cell phone and is utilizing social media, and I know that this is going to be in another segment with us, but take a look, watch those social media accounts, because so much of this is happening on social media and through text message. Really keep an eye on your student. And then when you locate something, please alert the authorities and the school district as soon as possible. Are metal detectors being installed in the school? No, they're not. We have many effective measures. One of the big ones for us is obviously our security specialists, and then it's those relationships that we build with kids daily. And our weapons incidences are generally reported by our kids when they do occur, and those numbers are very low. So I wouldn't support having metal detectors in our schools. I don't think that's a welcoming environment.
Right.
If I could just add a little bit to that, when Chris is talking about our preventative system, it's around threat assessment and fire setting, and that team of school psychologists, we really try to be preventative and listen to what's going on with kids. And we work really hard to have a culture of reporting. One of our middle school principals was talking to me the other day about, she's like, yeah, we found out who did that really quickly because we've got a great culture of reporting at our school. And so kids who feel safe with the adults in the school tell us things about other kids that helps us prevent things from happening. So that's always our goal with those systems. And critical is those relationships we build with kids. And that's why our security specialist team is highly trained in, we need you to build relationships with kids, because then they will tell them things. I also was sitting in a training with one of our lead security specialists this week who talked about, you know, as a security specialist, when you are taking a student to class when they're tardy, instead of, you need to escort them to get them there, but instead of talking to them about all the reasons why they're tardy, build a relationship with them on your way to getting them to class. And so it was really fun to watch how we're thinking really differently about those relationships, still with high accountability. Still, we need kids to go to class and be in class on time, but the ability to build a relationship as the student is being escorted to class is a little different way to think about that. But we know that's really critical for our kids, that relationship building.
Absolutely. One of those preventative pieces that we want to do for every student, so that when students need additional support, we know them and we have an inroads to begin to support them and what they need. So just a follow-up, Coral, to a question for you. How do I know my school is signed up for Safe Oregon?
I believe all schools in Salem-Keizer school district are enrolled. And so anyone who is attending and listening tonight should be able to use the service. You know, I know kids talk, and we do have, we receive tips from schools that are not yet enrolled. And so if we receive those, we will reach out to the school to get them enrolled. But everyone that attends a Salem-Keizer public school should be.
Wonderful. Thank you. So there's a lot of questions coming up from the audience around communication. And I know there's a lot of concern around firearms. And this question is, what is the district doing to communicate to parents and families the importance of responsible and secure storage of firearms in the home, not only for keeping schools safer, but also as part of a multifaceted approach to suicide prevention among our youth? A lot of questions packed in there.
Sylvia, I don't know if you want to tackle this one. All I can say is it's a really good idea. We haven't tackled it. And as far as on the suicide prevention side, it's thank you for the suggestion, and I'll get it to our teams. We haven't tackled that one, Chris. I think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah, it is. We have talked about that, a multifaceted approach to getting talking to students, talking to families about firearm safety, working with our partners on this. So that is coming. We're working on that. So that is such a great suggestion, and we are working on that.
Fantastic. And so that's one of the other benefits of this space too, is we need your ideas in the community as well, so that we're tending to the right things. And that first step, of course, is awareness, and then making sure that we can act on that awareness and move additional supports forward. So along the lines of communication and letting families know what's happening in schools, if there is a school threat, how will parents be notified? Will we receive an email notice?
I can take that. What we do first, I do want to say this, it's really critical on when and how we notify parents. We do know when something happens, rumors start spreading, and it's really critical that we control the rumor mill. And if I might just give an example really quickly why that's important. I was out in the community during one of our threats, and I was listening to the Emergency Operations Center. What we do is we start listening, we start making sure we have all the information, And then communications is a part of that team. And what they're doing is looking at talking to folks about what do we need to communicate at what time, but we have to give the right information, right? And I say that to say, I was out in the community at a church talking to one of our community partners who was really frantic. She said, God, what's going over there at McKay? There's people carrying guns. My friend called me, she's in tears. And so they were hearing a lot of different things. And so by me being connected to the EOC and hearing the actual events happening and unfolding, I was able to share with her, that is not what's happening. This is what's happening. So she actually calmed down. She said, can I call my friend? So she called her friend and gave her the information. So again, we want to make sure when we give you that information, it's the right information. We're not trying to hide anything. We want to be transparent, but we generally have to have the correct information. We have to make sure our law enforcement partners are able to do their investigation before we actually give that information. And it has to be the right information. Along with that, social media. Just wanted to mention that. A lot of times stuff gets on social media and it can get really messy because that information generally is not correct. So we really try to control the information internally with our staff, especially. I know staff want to really be helpful and get information out to families who are calling, but we always ask that we're able to control the information so it's the right information at the right time.
The best place for the accurate information that we can share at the time is our Twitter feed that is on the district website. So there was an incident at McNary. You saw the Twitter feed on the website students have been evacuated from this school, everyone's safe. So we'll try to give little bits of information on that feed as emergency information in the time. So you can be assured that whatever you're hearing is just rumor and that the most accurate information is there. Then after the incident, then we go into communicating with our families via Parent Square. So we have in the moment on the Twitter feed and then Parent Square for the full information. Or if we receive a threat and we've determined that the threat is not credible, that would be an email in an evening through Parent Square to families so they have the up-to-date information. Because in that case, especially to date, our threats have not been credible threats to say, we've heard this happen, we've investigated it thoroughly and determined it's credible, not credible. That goes right to parents' email. If there was ever a case where we needed to dismiss kids from school, that would be a different emergency level of communication. So we are trying to give some in the moment communication, but also our goal in those moments is to give our full attention to keeping the environment safe for kids. So if you're wondering what we're doing during this time, we are doing all hands on deck to keep kids safe and trying to just give, yep, everyone's okay at this school. Yes, there is law enforcement there. Everyone's fine in a lockdown as we know information, but also remember the situation's evolving. So we try to give some, but we often can't give everything. And our full force of attention is on securing and keeping kids safe in the environment.
Thank you for bringing that, Superintendent Perry. Twitter is one of our best platforms to look at during an emergency. I also wanted to mention there are times we do post on school websites and our own website as well. So depending on where the situation is happening, we may be able to give out some details. And so we will put things on the front page of that particular school website.
Chris, can I add just real quick, if you don't mind? Also, the social media sites for the local law enforcement agencies are another good resource if folks follow those. If there's big events or even just traffic situations, we will oftentimes send out update information to, stay away from this area, things like that. It's not going to be detailed, but it's a notification to then start looking at other places for additional information. Every time a school goes on lockdown, obviously the law enforcement and the school district are communicating with each other about that. And that continues until the emergency is done.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thinking of that social media and the communication component too, that's a way for us to connect with the community and for us to articulate what our process is and make sure people have the right information at the right time. Here's a question from one of our audience members. What should I do if I see something on social media that concerns me?
Good question. Go ahead, Sylvia.
I was going to say, please let us know. We monitor social media every single day, particularly our platforms. People do message us when they see things. Some people have sent us screenshots, so please let us know.
And you can also let people know through Safe Oregon, or
if it's a threat.
If it's a threat, directly to law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
You have to kind of judge where do you think it needs to go and how quick does it need to get there, and then get it to the right place. If all else fails, Safe Oregon is the quick and easy. Or in an emergency, if you really think there's something that is life-threatening. We have had some situations where kids have picked up on social media a potential suicide, and that's a direct 911. I'm worried about this situation. I'm not sure if law enforcement would like to respond.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, I think the message that I'd really like to get across to everyone that's here with us is that there is a lot of constant communication between law enforcement and the school district. And it's good communication. It's when we get a credible threat, we are in direct conversations with the schools, and the schools are in direct conversations with us. So I'd like to say that when these things happen, we work really closely with each other. And kind of going back to the social media piece, a lot of misinformation gets put out, and part of what we're all trying to do is make sure that the right information is shared with people to try and calm some of the nerves.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to mention, whether you have the app or you text in a tip, you can attach a screenshot, so a photo or a video for Safe Oregon. But again, just to kind of echo what everyone said, we work really closely with all the community partners, especially local law enforcement. So we will do everything we can to get that escalated quickly.
Right.
The one thing I wanted to say is one of the things that you can do to assist us is if you see something on social media, take a quick screen capture of what you're seeing. A lot of social media platforms that it deletes very quickly. And then what we would ask of you is please don't share it any further. Stop the share right there. A lot of, especially misinformation can keep moving and rolling forward. Please just stop, just take a screen capture of it, then alert your local law enforcement, Safe Oregon, your school district, and then we'll work with you directly on managing that, but please don't share it any further. It can cause a lot of distraction and a lot of panic.
Great. So we have a couple of questions that are kind of closely related to each other in terms of how we, what our systems look like for natural disasters and connected to how we prepare for some of these events. So there's two questions here. The first one is, how frequently do students practice lockdown drills?
That's a great question. So we practice them at a minimum of twice per year, once at the start of the year and then once just after January. And then our schools are encouraged to drill and talk about those things anytime they have an opportunity to do that within the district.
Okay. Then the follow-up question there is, what are systems to respond to flooding or earthquakes or other natural disasters?
Yeah. I laugh because I never thought we would have to actually deal with those, and we got a lot of experience of those over the last year. So all the same systems that you've seen here that support the safety of our buildings also support us during natural disasters. So we have all those abilities to stand up the emergency operations centers. Those then become very heavy heavily involved with our facilities teams and our maintenance teams, our custodial staff, our security staff, to ensure what is the state of our buildings, where are they at, can they function, do they have power, do they have internet, and we start looking at those systems and start getting them back in line. We obviously had to navigate that during fires. And then we also had to navigate that during the ice storm, which had very, very significant impacts on our buildings with the loss of power and loss of internet and some damage.
Okay.
Chris, those conversations in regards to natural disaster also come up, Marion County Emergency Management. Obviously, the city has their emergency management, but those communications don't just stop with the police matters. It's really countywide, citywide resources and collaboration between all the departments in the school district. So the school district has their plans for these natural disasters. The county has our plans, city, and they all communicate, interconnect to utilize resources the best and share resources as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That's a really good point. Like during the ice storms, we were reaching into the county's emergency operations center because obviously they're much bigger than us and they're coordinating with the state. And we also have the ability to see all of their emergency management software, their computer systems, and see what they're working on. And we can support each other. So if we needed to stand up like food distribution sites, clothing distribution sites, obviously we're a community partner, and we work collaboratively with them to make some of those things happen if they need our help.
One of the things, in addition to our emergency operations centers, we do partner with the Red Cross, and then in our new construction, any of our new construction that's a whole new section of a building, we've built those to immediate reoccupancy in an earthquake, so that there are going to be places in the community across every area of the community that should be available in the event of a very large natural disaster like a large earthquake that haven't been there in the past. So between all of us, we have a lot of resources, and the key is really around the partnerships and us being able to quickly connect our emergency operation procedures.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm learning a lot tonight too. We think about, we have 5,000 plus team members in Salem-Keizer, and everybody working hard to take care of kids. And there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into making that happen. And one of the things that, speaking of behind the scenes, that folks have expressed an interest in is the increase in physical altercations. And what are some of the ways that we manage that behind the scenes? So one question from one of our audience members is, our student is seeing violence between students daily. What is being done to minimize issues at middle school? And what can I tell my student to calm her from witnessing this?
Do you want to start, Chris, or do you want me to?
I'll start, and then I think it starts well at the kind of the security level first. So obviously, we work very hard to prevent any type of physical altercation from happening, and they do happen within our schools. But that's where those relationships are being built with our security specialists right in the hallways. They have their eyes and their ears open. And they're communicating with our teaching staff as well as our school leadership to try and have a good pulse, if you will, on the building and the kids, and being as a preventative measure. And then on the backside, there's a whole bunch more work being done. And I'm going to turn that over to Superintendent Perry.
Yeah, we have definitely seen kids coming back very dysregulated in ways from the pandemic. So they've been out, they've not been in large crowds, and as they've come back, we have seen dysregulated kids. So schools, depending on the school, I'm not sure what school the question came from. The first thing I would do, if you're saying daughter's witnessing it on a daily basis, is let's get engaged at the school level with the principal, and let's put a team around that school. So we've done things such as more adults in the hallways, looking at the places where events are happening, more security specialists, taking more adults and bringing them into the environment, and then really just teaching kids behavioral expectations and helping them be regulated in our schools. One of the notes I want to make tonight around, we hear a lot about restorative practice. And what does that mean when a student gets in a major altercation at school? And does that mean then that the kids are always, are kids just coming back in schools? One of the principles around restorative practice is high level of accountability and high level of support. So a student that's been in a fight or there's aggressive acts at school doesn't mean there aren't consequences. It means that we also want to work with students to engage them in ways that they can re-enter the school environment in a positive way, because that's our goal, is for kids to show up and be able to engage in their learning. So if you hear the word restorative practice, erase that it means no consequences, because that's not it at all. High accountability with the supports for our students for when they re-enter into the school environment to be successful. So if the person who asked the question about middle schools has a direct school they would like to talk about, our middle school director, Matt Biondi, is on tonight. And if you would drop him an email, he'll begin a conversation at your daughter's school.
Chris, it looks like we missed a pretty important part of Coral's program around Safe Oregon that she'd like to talk about, if that's okay.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that we do have materials on our website in both Spanish and English, and then the schools have access to additional materials in Chinese, Russian, Somali, Spanish, and Vietnamese. And so we want to make sure that, again, it's a program that is accessible to everyone, both students and parents. So please make sure that you are reaching out if you need those.
Great. Thank you, Coral. So when we think about some of the challenges we've seen with student behavior, one of the things that goes hand in hand is the mental health and well-being of our students. We'd seen some difficulties, of course, over the last 10 years with increasing levels of depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation. Some of our data show that our students have struggled even more during this time. And we've seen some encouraging signs of resilience in many of our students. So one of the questions that comes up here is, regarding our concern around student and staff mental health, what is the school district doing to address this concern?
Do we have anybody from, that would be you, Chris.
That's you, Chris.
There we go.
Chris,
all right. I was waiting for it.
Okay. You could ask yourself that question.
There we go.
I can help. I really can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is top of mind for everyone, and it's impacts our entire community. And one of the things that we've tried to do is deeply engage with our students around what it is that they need. And many of you may recall a few years ago with the student investment account, community voice, student voice, staff voice influenced that process. And as a result of that work, of that community voice and staff voice and student voice, we've been able to add some additional supports in schools. So we have over 120 school counselors. We were able to add a few of those. We have now 20 school social workers when we used to have 4. We have 12 school psychologists we've been able to add 2 and still are looking for 2 more. So those are some of the people that we have in place to really form those relationships and be on the lookout for ways that we can come alongside students and their families to access the care they need. One of the additional pieces we've been working on, and it's important to know and be completely transparent about this. All of our systems in the community, from education to healthcare to law enforcement to health and human services, are taxed right now, full of people who are doing everything they possibly can to take care of our kids and our community. And so one of the things to know is we have community mental health partners and partnerships with Marion County Children's Behavioral Health and Polk County Behavioral Health and Stronger Oregon and Trillium Family Services. They have been amazing partners and are currently doing everything they can to add clinicians to see more kids. We got some great news in this last month that some of our partners added clinicians and are getting some more in-person services in schools. We know that in-person is best. That's where we connect best with kids and families. And we're also adapting to those needs of families who aren't comfortable coming into the school, perhaps for services, and having them go to an agency or access telehealth. So those are some of the pieces that we are looking at more broadly with personnel and community partnerships, but also we're using data to drive some of the allocation of our resources, which is where are some of the students struggling the most? Where do we need to amplify some of our suicide prevention work? How do we make sure that all employees in Salem-Keizer know some of those basic signs and symptoms to look for? And so one of our prevention strategies is QPR, or question, persuade, refer. And we're now up to having over 4,800 Salem-Keizer employees who have gone through basic training in QPR, serving as that foundational kind of first line support for identifying students who might need more help, and then can move through the process with our counselors, social workers, and suicide prevention program coordinators to get the help that they need. We're looking at some additional strategies around giving teachers who are doing everything they can right now, and one more thing of additional support might be too much. We're looking at some low burden, high impact strategies that we're partnering with vendors in the community. So one of the strategies we're looking at is with a company called Empower You, where they have clinicians that work for them that can then support students through social emotional learning and resilience building modules and providing feedback there. So we're piloting some small things in service of building a bigger, better, more robust system, and we know we can continue to improve.
And I can add a little bit from the law enforcement side on this. Outside of the schools, you know, if law enforcement is responding to some sort of family situation or dynamic in the home, there's processes in place where we can share, and we do share, limited information with the school district, just so that they're aware and they can kind of be, you know, keep eyes on the kids once they're at school and just check in with them for their well-being. Because, you know, law enforcement responds to the family home, and it's not always a fun time, and those effects carry into the school the next day or the following weeks. And, you know, we do our part to share that information to work with the school.
Fantastic. Thank you, Commanders.
I just kind of want to add a couple things. First of all, the community partners, we have one community partner attached to every school in the school district with Marion County Behavioral Health, Polk County Behavioral Health. So every school has a mental health partner to provide services at school. The goal is to get more clinicians with those partners so they can offer more slots for service. And then I can't stress enough the importance of listening to what your kids share and reporting. If you have something that worries you. It's hard when your kids are talking to you about a friend, but being a really good listener can often be a life-saving event for a child. And places to report are your child's teacher, school counselor. Every school counselor in the district is trained in suicide risk prevention to start a protocol related to assessing a student and where they're at. So please don't hesitate to report. We can't, it's all all eyes have to be on our kids to keep them safe. One story I'll share with you is a parent reported to us that she couldn't figure out why her daughter was late to school every day. And she was super frustrated with her daughter because her daughter was late to school. And finally, she got to the bottom of it with her daughter. Her daughter's friend was talking about suicide. And once she heard that, she emailed all of her child's teachers through I think it was through Parent Square, but through one of our apps, she emailed all the teachers. By morning, a teacher had responded, or a school counselor, I can't remember all the details of the story, and responded with an intervention for the student. So it doesn't take waiting for a phone call to get through. It can be an email. It can be through our Parent Square system to do messages. And literally 5:30 in the morning, somebody answered her and intervened with the student. So please, no reporting is too much. When we think about safety of our kids, whether it's reporting to Safe Oregon, whether it's reporting to law enforcement, whether it's reporting to any school official, somebody will pick up, and you really can't over-report, I think would be my message. Now, Coral, would you agree with that? Or law enforcement, like we can't have too much information on kids?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And, your children know their friends better than anyone else. And so when they hear things or are concerned about their friends, definitely take it seriously. When Safe Oregon, when we receive really critical or urgent tips, we reach out to local law enforcement, school administrators, middle of the night, and, people answer their phones. And so I would say don't wait. If you have concerns or something doesn't feel right, and definitely always speak up and report.
Great, thank you. Lots of great questions still for us to get to. So one of the things that is connected, of course, to our work supporting the social emotional health and the behavioral health of students is that sometimes it is manifested with some behavior concerns and altercations. We look at behavior as a form of communication, and sometimes we might say that is a bid for attention. One of the ways we think about reframing our mindset is a bid for connection, for someone to help, for someone to support, and there are lots of different ways to do that. One question here is, does building climate suffer when you don't have the resources to address lower level behavioral needs and establish positive culture due to staff shortages and more extreme needs?
Yeah, let me go ahead and take that. I would say, yes, more adults, more trained adults are always better for kids. Anytime I have testified about school funding, testified about the need for more, especially school counselors, social workers, any of that, I always start with, there's no shortcut to getting kids to graduation, because getting kids to graduation means adults that are side by side with our kids, either very skilled teachers, counselors, social workers. So I would say yes, as we have staffing shortages, if you think about substitutes that aren't your child's regular classroom teacher, skilled substitutes can build relationships, but it's still the classroom teacher when they come back that's really set the environment for the classroom. So the short answer is yes, the long answer is yes. I had the opportunity to be in a classroom, and when that teacher got back, I saw a huge difference in that first grade classroom, because she just knew the kids and knew how to manage the classroom in the way a substitute couldn't.
Thank you. So thinking about all the components that we've talked about here, kind of a big initial question, and would love to hear just thoughts in general about this. How can I feel safe sending my child to school? How can I feel safe sending my child to school?
It's such a good question, Chris. And I think about this regularly, because sometimes just talking about systems isn't enough to make a person feel safe. So I would ask, if you're experiencing where you're not feeling safe at school, is to go directly to your school and speak to your school, your teacher, your principal. And they'll talk about what all is happening and all the systems that are in place and things that they can help your child with their own psychological safety inside of the school, so that they're having a great experience while they're at school.
Yeah, and I just want to, I'm the person to add examples tonight too. I was at a elementary school, and a parent was handing off probably a 6-year-old, so probably kindergarten or first grade. And I was, trying to be helpful, and I was facilitating breakfast, and this student was sobbing. And I looked at mom and I said, we'll take good care of your daughter. Don't worry. And this kid's just sobbing. Please don't leave me, mom. Please don't leave. I don't want to come to school. And the person who was in the lunch place at the doorway grabbed her hand, and mom looked at me and was like, oh yes, she'll be great. Not because I was there, and I can't remember the employee's name, because Mrs. So-and-so is here. She takes great care of her every day. And so looking at that mom and putting myself there, I would have felt very anxious as I was handing off my child, but she already had the relationship and knew the person that was going to carry her student in through the day. And it was 30 minutes, but that adult sat with that student the entire time. So if you're worried, build relationship with your school and help your child find the one trusted adult that makes them feel safe. Because as kids were home and they're coming back into big environments, there is lots of feelings of anxiety that might not have been there before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the panel want to answer?
I'll add just a little bit, I guess, from the law enforcement side. There are so many officers, deputies out there that are parents themselves, and sending their kids to school every day. And there's things that we all can agree on. There's things that we all can disagree on. But the one thing I think that every one of us takes to heart and is fully vested in is the safety of our kids, and that is just across the board. So that's why tonight we've talked a lot about the communication and collaboration between departments and agencies. That's really a piece that brings us all together, and it's valuable. It's important.
Yeah, Superintendent, if I may, I think there's one term that stuck with me since I've come to the district about 1.5 years ago, and that's we show up for kids. And I witness it every day in our buildings, every day in classrooms, every day, from a custodian helping a kid find their classroom, because some of our buildings are just massive, right? And they show up for kids every day. They have kids' best interests at mind, and or at their core, and making sure that they're having a great day. And that's probably one of the amazing things to watch at school, is to see the staff and the kids interact, and especially when a kid is struggling and they get to know kids despite our size, right? It's amazing to meet a principal who is ahead of a high school that has almost 2,000 kids in it, and they know the vast majority of those kids' names, and they fist bump as they go down the hallway, or they're having conversations with kids. It's really something remarkable. That relationship piece is key. And if your student is struggling, or you're struggling as a parent, please reach out to us so that we can help with that.
Really nicely summarized. So appreciate your insights of all of our panelists. And again, this is the beginning of a conversation that will be ongoing, and finishing up on a note of hope, of discussing those pieces that we know continue to happen each and every day, while we're also tending to those areas where we are concerned, and articulating the things that we are doing, have done, and will continue to do to tend to the safety of your kids.